Evan Cole's hands trembled as he stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive suite, 70 stories above a city that had chewed him up and spit him out. Behind him, Mara Vance, the woman whose emails made grown men cry, sat perfectly still, watching him like a predator studies prey. "I'm offering you a way out," she said, her voice ice-wrapped in silk. "Marry me for 1 year. I'll erase everything you owe." Evan's daughter's face flashed through his mind, her fever, the hospital bills, the eviction notice taped to their door. He was drowning. And this woman, this beautiful, terrifying stranger, was offering him a hand. But at what cost? Before we dive into this story of desperation, power, and unexpected love, I want to invite you on this journey with me. Stay until the end. You won't believe where this takes us. And please, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights in the hospital waiting room buzzed like dying wasps, a sound that had become the soundtrack to Evan Cole's slow-motion collapse. He sat hunched in a plastic chair that dug into his spine, elbows on his knees, face buried in calloused hands that smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Around him, the world moved in fragments, nurses in soft-soled shoes squeaking past, a television mounted in the corner playing the news with the sound turned down, a vending machine humming its electric lullaby in the corner. But Evan heard none of it. His entire universe had narrowed to the door marked Pediatric Intensive Care, and the 6-year-old girl fighting a fever behind it. "Mr. Cole?" He jerked his head up, heart hammering. Dr. Ramesh stood before him, her brown eyes kind but tired, her scrubs wrinkled from a double shift. Evan shot to his feet, nearly knocking over the cold coffee he'd forgotten on the chair beside him. Is Lily, she's stable, Dr. Ramesh said quickly, and Evan felt his knees go weak with relief. "The antibiotics are working. Her temperature's coming down. We'll keep her overnight for observation, but I think she's turned the corner." Evan pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, willing himself not to break down in the middle of the waiting room. "Thank God. Thank God. You can see her in a few minutes. She's asking for you." Dr. Ramesh paused, her expression shifting to something more uncomfortable. "Mr. Cole, I need to speak with you about the billing department. They've asked me to remind you that your account is overdue." "I know." Evan's voice came out harsher than he intended. He softened it. "I'm sorry. I know. I'm working on it." That was a lie. He wasn't working on it. He was drowning in it. Dr. Ramesh nodded slowly. "The hospital has financial assistance programs. I can have someone from patient services come talk to you. I've already applied. 3 times. I make too much to qualify." Evan laughed, a bitter sound. "Apparently, $38,000 a year is living large." The doctor's expression flickered with sympathy. "I'll see what I can do. For now, focus on Lily. She needs you." As Dr. Ramesh walked away, Evan sank back into the chair, reality crashing over him in waves. The hospital bills alone were approaching $40,000. Lily had been sick off and on for 2 years, ever since her mother had abandoned them both and disappeared into the Texas night. Add to that the credit cards he'd maxed out keeping them fed and housed, the payday loans with interest rates that should be illegal, the back rent that had his landlord leaving increasingly threatening voicemails. He pulled out his phone and opened his banking app, a habit that had become a form of self-torture. Checking account, $147.23. Rent was due in 6 days. Rent was $1,200. His phone buzzed with a text from his landlord. Final notice. Pay by the 15th or we start eviction proceedings. No exceptions this time. Another buzz, this one from his ex-wife's lawyer, custody hearing rescheduled to December 20th. Your financial instability remains a concern for the court. Evan stared at that message until the words blurred. Christina had been gone for 4 years. She'd left when Lily was 2, said she couldn't handle motherhood, couldn't handle the responsibility, couldn't handle him. Evan had thought good riddance until 6 months ago, when she'd reappeared with a new husband, a new job, and a sudden burning desire to be a mother again. Now she was using his poverty as a weapon. arguing that Lily deserved better than a father who could barely keep the lights on, that a child needed stability, resources, opportunities, all the things Evan wanted to give his daughter but couldn't afford. The worst part was Christina wasn't entirely wrong. "Daddy?" The small voice nearly broke him. Evan looked up to see a nurse holding the door open. Through it, he could see Lily's hospital bed and the little girl sitting up in it, her blonde hair tangled, her face pale but smiling. Evan crossed the room in 3 strides, gathering his daughter into his arms as gently as he could manage around all the tubes and monitors. She smelled like hospital antiseptic and the strawberry shampoo she loved. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered into her hair. "You scared me." "I'm okay, Daddy. Dr. Ramesh said I was very brave." Lily pulled back, her green eyes, so much like her mother's, searching his face with that unsettling perception children sometimes have. "Are you okay?" "Of course I am. Now that I know you're better." He brushed her hair back from her forehead, felt the residual warmth of her fever. "How do you feel?" "Tired, and my arm hurts where the needle goes." She touched the IV port carefully. "Daddy, can we go home soon?" "Tomorrow, sweetheart. They want to make sure you're all better first." "Will you stay with me?" "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." Lily giggled at that. It was their joke, had been since she was tiny, and settled back against her pillows. Within minutes, she was asleep, her small hand wrapped around his larger one. Evan sat in the chair beside her bed and watched her breathe. In sleep, she looked impossibly young, impossibly fragile. He thought about Christina's lawyer's letter, about the custody hearing, about the judge who would look at his bank statements and see a man failing his daughter. "I'm trying," he wanted to scream. "I'm working 60-hour weeks. I'm doing everything right. Why isn't it enough?" But the universe didn't answer. It never did. Meds. Evan made it to work the next morning on 3 hours of sleep and gas station coffee. He'd left the hospital at 6 a.m., gone home to shower and change, and caught the bus downtown to the gleaming glass tower that housed Vance Industries. The building was a monument to money, all chrome and marble, with a lobby that echoed like a cathedral. Evan's reflection in the polished floor looked small and shabby. Discount store slacks, a button-down shirt that was fraying at the collar, work boots that had seen better days. He kept his head down as he crossed to the service elevator. The main elevators were for executives, for people who mattered. The service elevator was for people like him, maintenance workers, janitors, the invisible army that kept the building functioning while the real business happened above their heads. Rough night? Evan looked up to see Marcus, one of the other maintenance guys, already waiting for the elevator. Marcus was in his 50s with a beer gut and kind eyes. "Lily was in the hospital again." Marcus winced. "Damn, man, she okay?" "Yeah, she'll be home this afternoon." Evan didn't mention the bills. Marcus had his own problems. Evan had heard him on the phone with bill collectors more than once. They rode up to the maintenance offices on the 3rd floor in silence. Their supervisor, a humorless man named Garrett, who treated the equipment better than the people, was already waiting with the day's assignments. "Cole, you're on executive floors today, 70 through 75. There's a busted air handler on 72, and they're complaining about the temperature in the boardroom." Evan nodded, grabbing his toolkit. The executive floors paid the same as everywhere else, but they made him nervous. Up there, people wore suits that cost more than his monthly rent. Up there, his mistakes were noticed. Up there was where she worked. He'd never met Mara Vance. The actual CEO wasn't someone who noticed the maintenance staff, but he'd seen her. Everyone had seen her. She was impossible to miss. Tall, dark-haired, beautiful in that cold, untouchable way that belonged on magazine covers. She ran the company with an iron fist, had tripled profits in 5 years, and was universally feared by everyone below her tax bracket. The rumor mill said she was brilliant and ruthless, that she'd clawed her way to the top over the bodies of her competitors, that she'd fired an entire department once for missing a quarterly projection by 2%. Evan had no desire to ever be in the same room with her. The service elevator climbed toward the executive floors. Evan closed his eyes and thought about Lily's smile, about getting through this day, this week, this impossible month. He thought about the eviction notice and the custody hearing and the bills he couldn't pay. He thought about drowning. The elevator dinged, 72nd floor. Evan stepped out into a different world, Up here, the carpets were plush, the walls were decorated with actual art, and the air smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. He found the mechanical room, diagnosed the air handler problem, a failed capacitor, easy fix, and got to work. He was elbow deep in the unit when his phone rang. Unknown number. Evan almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers were never good news. They were bill collectors, they were his landlord's lawyer, they were the universe calling to inform him of some new catastrophe. But he was expecting a call from the hospital about Lily's discharge, so he wiped his hands on his pants and answered. "This is Evan Cole." "Mr. Cole, this is Diane from Human Resources." The woman's voice was professional, neutral. "I need you to come up to the executive suite immediately." Evan's stomach dropped. "I'm in the middle of a repair." "Now, Mr. Cole." The line went dead. For a long moment, Evan stood frozen, his mind racing through possibilities. Had he screwed something up? Broken something expensive? Was this it? Was he about to be fired? No, he thought desperately. Not now. Not when everything else is falling apart. But he had no choice. He closed up the air handler, grabbed his toolkit, and headed for the elevators. The executive suite was on 75, the top floor, where the air was thinner and the people were sharper. The receptionist barely glanced at him. "Conference room C. They're waiting." They. Evan's hands were sweating. He followed the signs down a hallway lined with windows overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking. He could see the whole downtown sprawl, the river cutting through it like a silver ribbon, the hills beyond. He'd never been this high up before, had never been invited into the room where decisions were made. Conference room C had frosted glass walls and a door that whispered shut behind him. Inside, Diane from HR sat at a long table, her expression carefully blank. Across from her was a man in an expensive suit, legal probably, and at the head of the table, Mara Vance. Evan's breath caught. She was even more striking up close. Late 30s, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a style that was simultaneously elegant and severe. Her suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. Her eyes were an unusual shade of amber, and they fixed on Evan with an intensity that made him feel like a butterfly pinned to a board. "Mr. Cole," she said. Her voice was lower than he'd expected, almost smoky. "Sit down." Evan sat. His toolkit clunked against his leg. He felt like he'd been called to the principal's office, except the principal was a woman who controlled a billion-dollar company and probably ate people like him for breakfast. "Do you know why you're here?" Mara asked. "No, ma'am." Something flickered in her eyes. Amusement? Irritation? It was gone too quickly to tell. "You've been with Vance Industries for 3 years. Your supervisor reports that you're reliable, skilled, and you don't complain. Your work record is clean." Evan nodded slowly, not trusting himself to speak. This didn't sound like a firing, but it didn't sound good either. Mara leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Tell me about your personal situation, Mr. Cole. You're a single father, correct?" Ice flooded Evan's veins. "With all due respect, ma'am, that's not really relevant to my job performance. I'll determine what's relevant." Her voice didn't rise, but it cut like a blade. "Answer the question." Evan swallowed hard. Beside him, Diane from HR was typing something on a laptop, her face carefully neutral. The lawyer was watching him like a hawk. "Yes, ma'am. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Her mother isn't in the picture. And you're currently facing significant financial difficulties." It wasn't a question. Evan felt his face flush with shame. "I'm managing." "You're drowning." Mara pulled a folder across the table, flipped it open. "You're behind on rent. You have over $50,000 in medical and credit card debt. You're being sued by 3 separate creditors, and your ex-wife is seeking primary custody of your daughter based on your financial instability." Evan's vision tunneled. "How do you can't, that's private. This is my company, Mr. Cole. I know everything that happens within these walls. And when one of my employees is in a crisis that could become a liability, I take an interest." She closed the folder. "You're one missed paycheck away from losing everything. Am I wrong?" Evan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her to mind her own damn business, to take her $1 billion and her judgment and shove them both. But the fight had gone out of him. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "You're not wrong." Mara nodded as if he'd confirmed something she already knew. She stood, walked to the windows, gazed out at the city below. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Not softer exactly, but thoughtful. "I'm going to make you an offer, Mr. Cole. You can accept it or decline it, but I'd strongly suggest you listen before you make a decision." Evan's heart hammered. "What kind of offer?" Mara turned to face him. The light from the windows backlit her, turned her into a silhouette, made her impossible to read. "I need to get married," she said flatly, "for reasons that are complicated and frankly none of your concern. The marriage needs to appear legitimate, needs to last at least 1 year, and needs to withstand scrutiny from my family and the board of directors. In exchange, I will pay off every debt you have. I will cover your daughter's medical expenses, all of them, past and future. I will provide you with housing, a substantial monthly stipend, and legal representation for your custody case." The room spun. Evan gripped the edge of the table. "You want me to marry you?" "Contractually, yes. I've had legal draw-up paperwork. You would move into my residence, attend necessary social functions as my husband, and maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. In private, we would lead separate lives. No physical intimacy is required or expected. After 1 year, we divorce quietly, and you walk away debt-free with enough money to give your daughter the life she deserves." Evan stared at her. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of fever dream brought on by too much stress and too little sleep. "Why me?" he managed. For the first time, Mara's expression shifted. Something that might have been vulnerability flickered across her face and vanished. "Because you're not ambitious. You're not connected to anyone who matters. You have nothing to gain by selling me out to the press or to my competitors. And because—" She hesitated, almost imperceptibly. "Because you remind me that there are still people in the world who care about something other than money and power." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Vance, perhaps we should give Mr. Cole time to review the contract." "He doesn't need time," Mara said. "He needs a way out of hell, and I'm offering him one." Those amber eyes locked onto Evans again. 1 year of your life, Mr. Cole, in exchange for saving your daughter's future. That's the deal." Evan's mind raced. This was insane. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not to broke maintenance workers from nowhere, Texas. But as his thoughts spun, he kept coming back to one image. Lily in that hospital bed, pale and fragile. Lily asking if they could go home. Lily's face when she realized her mother wanted to take her away from her father. "What's the catch?" he asked. Mara almost smiled. "The catch is that my family will do everything in their power to prove this marriage is fake. They'll investigate you, test you, push you to see if you break. If anyone discovers the truth, if the contract becomes public, you get nothing. Worse, you could be implicated in fraud. So if I do this, I have to be convincing. You have to be perfect." Silence stretched between them. Outside the conference room, Evan could hear the muffled sounds of the office. Phones ringing, people talking, the ordinary business of an ordinary day. None of those people knew that his entire life was balanced on the edge of a knife. He thought about the eviction notice, the custody hearing, Lily's next fever, the one that might come when he couldn't afford to take her to the hospital. He thought about drowning. And then he thought about a hand reaching down through the water, offering salvation, even if that hand was cold, even if it belonged to a stranger, even if accepting it meant stepping into a world he didn't understand. "If I say yes," Evan said slowly, "when would this start?" "Immediately. You'd move into my penthouse this weekend. We'd announce the marriage Monday. The wedding itself would be a small private ceremony, immediate family only, scheduled for next month. And after a year? Clean divorce. Amicable separation. You walk away with your debts cleared and $200,000. $200,000. It might as well have been $2 billion. Evan had never imagined having that kind of money. The lawyer slid the contract across the table. It was thick, bound, intimidating. "I'd recommend you have your own lawyer review this." "I don't have a lawyer," Evan said. "I don't even have rent money." But Mara's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. Understanding, maybe. Or pity. "Then you'll have to trust that I'm not trying to screw you over. Read it tonight, sign it tomorrow, or don't, and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Mr. Cole, I'm not a monster. I don't enjoy the position you're in, but I am pragmatic. This is a business arrangement that benefits us both, nothing more. And then she was gone, leaving Evan alone with HR and legal and a contract that promised to change his life. Evan didn't go back to work. He couldn't. His hands were shaking too badly to hold a wrench, his mind too fractured to focus on anything as mundane as fixing air conditioners. He sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Vance Tower, the contract spread across a corner table, and read every word. Twice. It was surprisingly straightforward. No hidden clauses, no traps he could see. Just the cold, clinical outline of a business transaction dressed up as a marriage. Duration. 1 year from date of legal marriage. Residence, joint residence at 1200 Skyline Drive, Penthouse A. Public obligations. Attendance at specified social and corporate functions as required. Financial compensation. Immediate debt forgiveness. Total $53,047.62. Housing, monthly stipend, $5,000. Medical coverage for dependent child, legal representation for custody proceedings, and final payment of $200,000 upon completion of contract terms. Termination clauses. Either party may terminate early only under specific circumstances: infidelity, criminal conduct, breach of confidentiality. Early termination voids financial compensation except debt forgiveness already provided. Confidentiality. The nature of this arrangement must remain strictly confidential. Public disclosure by either party results in immediate termination and legal penalties. Evan's phone buzzed. Text from the hospital. Lily discharged. Ready for pickup. He stared at those words. His daughter was waiting for him, trusting him to take care of her, to keep her safe, to be the parent she deserved. With his current trajectory, he was going to fail her. The eviction would go through. Christina would win custody. Lily would grow up thinking her father had been too weak, too broken, too poor to fight for her. But if he signed this contract, his phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello? Mr. Cole. Mara Vance's voice, crisp and businesslike. Have you made a decision? I haven't finished reading. Yes, you have. You've read it twice. I'm guessing you're sitting in a coffee shop somewhere, stalling, because you already know what you're going to do, but you're terrified of actually doing it. Evan blinked. How did you? I'm good at reading people. It's how I run a company. A pause. Your daughter is waiting at the hospital. You need to pick her up, take her home, and make sure she has dinner and her medication. You have about 3 hours before you need to be there. So I'll ask again. Have you made a decision? Evan looked down at the contract, at the signature line at the bottom, empty and waiting. If I do this, he said quietly, I need to know it's not going to hurt my daughter, that she'll be safe, that she'll be okay. I have no interest in hurting a child, Mr. Cole. Your daughter will have everything she needs, better schools, better health care, better opportunities. And when this is over, you'll be able to give her the life you've always wanted to provide. And what do you get out of this? Really? Another pause, longer this time. When Mara spoke again, her voice was different, not vulnerable, but honest, maybe. Control, she said. My family thinks I'm weak because I'm unmarried. They think they can manipulate me, push me out, take what I've built. A husband changes that equation, makes me less of a target. But I don't want a real marriage. I don't want someone who will betray me or try to take my power or think they have a claim on my life. I want someone who will play the role and then walk away. That's what you are, Mr. Cole. You're a solution to a problem. It should have stung. It didn't. There was something almost refreshing about her bluntness. Okay, Evan said. Okay? I'll sign, but I have one condition. He could hear the surprise in her silence. You're negotiating? Lily comes first, always. If anything in this arrangement puts her at risk, physically, emotionally, anything, I'm out. Contract or no contract. Agreed. Then send me whatever you need me to sign. I'll do it tonight. The lawyer will have the documents to you within the hour. Another pause. "Welcome to the family, Mr. Cole." The line went dead. Evan sat in that coffee shop for a long time after, staring at nothing, trying to process what he'd just agreed to. In the space of 3 hours, his entire life had been upended. Tomorrow, he would wake up as the same broke maintenance worker he'd been yesterday. But by next week, he'd be living in a penthouse, married to a woman he didn't know, playing a role in a drama he didn't understand. He thought about calling his brother, but Daniel would tell him he was crazy. He thought about calling his mother, but she'd been dead for 5 years. He thought about calling anyone, but there was no one. He and Lily were alone in the world. Not anymore, he thought. Now we have Mara Vance, for better or worse. He packed up the contract, left the coffee shop, and headed for the bus stop. He had a daughter to pick up from the hospital, a daughter who would ask about their apartment, about what was for dinner, about whether they could watch her favorite movie tonight. Evan would lie to her, would smile and say everything was fine, everything was going to be okay. And for the first time in 2 years, that might actually be true. He just had to marry a stranger first. Bokin. The documents arrived at 8 p.m., delivered by a courier who looked like he cost more per hour than Evan made in a week. Evan signed them at his kitchen table while Lily colored in her book, oblivious to the fact that her father had just sold a year of his life. When the courier left, Evan sat very still, listening to his daughter hum off-key and the ancient refrigerator rattle in the kitchen. This apartment, with its water-stained ceiling and neighbors who fought loudly at 3 a.m. and cockroaches that came out when the lights went off, had been his home for 3 years. By Saturday, it would just be a memory. His phone buzzed one last time. "Car will pick you up Saturday at 9 a.m. Pack light. Everything else will be provided." MV. Evan looked at Lily, at her blonde head bent over her coloring book, at the innocent way she smiled at nothing. "Daddy?" She looked up. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" "Sure, baby girl. We can have pancakes." "The good kind? With chocolate chips?" "The very best kind." She went back to coloring, satisfied. And Evan sat in the dim kitchen of his failing life and wondered what the hell he'd just done. Outside, the city hummed with indifference. Somewhere in a penthouse he'd never seen, Mara Vance was probably working late, moving pieces on a chessboard he couldn't see, securing her empire with a marriage contract and a maintenance worker too desperate to say no. In 3 days, Evan Cole would step into a different world. He just hoped he'd survive it. The black Mercedes arrived at exactly 9 a.m. Saturday morning, so sleek and pristine it looked like it had been teleported from another dimension. Evan stood on the cracked sidewalk outside his apartment building with 2 duffel bags containing everything he and Lily owned that mattered, watching the driver step out in a crisp black suit that probably cost more than Evan's car had before it died. "Mr. Cole?" The driver's voice was professionally neutral. "I'm James. Ms. Vance sent me to collect you and your daughter." Lily pressed against Evan's leg, suddenly shy. She was wearing her favorite dress, purple with butterflies, a yard sale find that had been washed so many times the fabric was soft as tissue paper. Her blonde hair was pulled into pigtails, and she clutched the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. "Where are we going, Daddy?" she whispered. Evan crouched down to her level, smoothed a stray hair behind her ear. "Remember how I told you we're moving to a new place? A really nice place with lots of space? Will I have my own room?" "Yeah, baby girl, your own room." "Will there be a bathtub? The shower here hurts my eyes." Evan's throat tightened. His 6-year-old daughter's dreams consisted of having her own room and a bathtub that didn't leak rusty water. "The biggest bathtub you've ever seen." Lily's eyes went wide. Then, with the resilience of children, she smiled and took his hand. "Okay, let's go." James loaded their bags into the trunk with the same careful respect he might give Louis Vuitton luggage. As they pulled away from the apartment complex, Evan watched it shrink in the side mirror, the peeling paint, the sagging balconies, the chain-link fence around the parking lot. Part of him felt relief. Another part felt like he was betraying something, though he couldn't say what. The drive took 20 minutes, climbing up into the hills where the city's wealth had pooled like water finding its level. The buildings here were glass and steel, their lobbies visible from the street, marble and modern art and doormen who looked like they could bounce at exclusive clubs. The Mercedes pulled up to a tower that seemed to pierce the sky itself, all dark glass and sharp angles. "We're here," James said unnecessarily. A doorman materialized to help with the bags. Lily gripped Evan's hand tighter as they entered a lobby that echoed with their footsteps, the ceiling so high it created its own weather system. A bored-looking woman at the concierge desk glanced up, saw James, and immediately straightened. "Mr. Cole," she said warmly, "welcome to Skyline Tower. Ms. Vance asked me to give you these." She handed over 2 key cards. "The private elevator is to your right, top floor. Ms. Vance is expecting you." The private elevator had mirrors on 3 walls and a panel with only one button, PH. Evan pressed it, and the elevator shot upward so smoothly his stomach took a moment to catch up. Lily made a small sound of wonder, watching the city fall away through the glass wall behind them. "Daddy, we're flying," she breathed. "Yeah, sweetheart, we're flying." The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, not into a hallway, into the actual apartment. Evan stepped out, and his brain briefly short-circuited, trying to process what he was seeing. The space was enormous, an open concept that flowed from living area to dining area to a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a cooking show. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 2 walls, offering a view of the entire city sprawling below them. The floors were pale hardwood, the furniture modern and expensive, everything in shades of white and gray and chrome. It was beautiful. It was also completely impersonal, like a photograph in an architecture magazine, perfect but somehow lifeless. "Holy shit," Evan breathed, then immediately clapped a hand over his mouth. "Sorry, Lily, I didn't mean—" Appropriate reaction. Evan spun. Mara Vance stood in a doorway he hadn't noticed, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders, and without the armor of her business suit she looked younger. Almost normal. Almost approachable. Almost. "Welcome," she said, crossing the room with the kind of grace that came from expensive ballet lessons and good posture training. Her eyes flicked to Lily, and something in her expression softened fractionally. "You must be Lily." Lily had gone statue still, staring up at this strange woman with a mix of awe and terror. Evan squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay. This is Mara. She's going to be helping us out for a while." "Miss Vance is fine," Mara said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. She crouched down, bringing herself to Lily's eye level in a move that surprised Evan. "Your father tells me you like butterflies." Lily nodded mutely, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "I thought you might. There's a garden on the rooftop terrace, 20 floors up. In summer, butterflies come to visit the flowers. Would you like to see your new room? I had someone prepare it. If you don't like it, we can change it." That broke through Lily's fear. "Really? I can change it?" "It's your room. You get to decide." Mara straightened and gestured for them to follow. She led them down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than most people's houses, then pushed open a door. Lily gasped. The room was perfect. Not perfect in the sterile way the rest of the penthouse was perfect. Perfect for a 6-year-old girl. The walls were painted a soft lavender, with white butterflies stenciled near the ceiling. There was a twin bed with a purple comforter, a bookshelf already stocked with children's books, a desk with art supplies, and a window seat overlooking the city. In the corner sat a dollhouse that looked handmade, intricate and beautiful. But it was the bathtub that made Lily's eyes go wide. Through an open door, Evan could see an ensuite bathroom with a tub big enough for a grown adult to stretch out in. It was surrounded by tiles in shades of purple and blue, like something from a fairy tale. "My own bathroom?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "All yours," Mara said. "The bath has jets. Your father will have to show you how to use them safely." Lily released Evan's hand and walked slowly into the room, like she was afraid it might disappear if she moved too fast. She touched the comforter, the books, the dollhouse. Then she turned back to them, her eyes shining with tears. "Is this real?" Evan's heart cracked. "Yeah, baby girl, it's real. Can I stay here forever?" "For a while," Evan managed. "For a good while." Mara cleared her throat. "I'll let you two settle in. Evan, your room is across the hall. We need to talk after Lily's situated." She paused at the door. "Lily, there's ice cream in the freezer. Chocolate chip. Your father mentioned it's your favorite." Then she was gone, leaving Evan staring after her, trying to reconcile the cold CEO from the conference room with the woman who'd just made his daughter cry happy tears. For the next hour, Evan helped Lily unpack, which mostly meant watching her explore every corner of her new domain. She discovered that the closet had a light that came on automatically, that the bookshelf had a rolling ladder, that the window seat had cushions soft as clouds. Each discovery was met with fresh wonder. When she was finally absorbed in arranging her stuffed animals on the bed, Evan slipped out to find Mara. She was in the kitchen, which seemed absurd, like finding a queen doing dishes. But there she was, making coffee in a machine that looked like it required an engineering degree to operate. "She likes the room," Evan said. "Good." Mara handed him a mug without asking if he wanted one. The coffee was perfect, rich and dark, and exactly the right temperature. "We need to discuss logistics. Sit." Evan sat at the kitchen island, feeling profoundly out of place on a bar stool that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Mara remained standing, leaning against the counter, the city spread out behind her like a kingdom. "Rules," she said without preamble. "I'm not a monster, but I am particular about my space. Your room is your domain. Do what you want there. Lily's room is hers. The rest of the penthouse is shared space. I work from home most evenings and some weekends. I need quiet to focus. I don't cook, so meals will either be delivered or prepared by the housekeeper. Her name is Vera. She comes 3 times a week." "There's a housekeeper?" Of course there was a housekeeper. "Vera will also handle Lily's laundry if you'd like, though that's your choice. I'm not particularly comfortable around children, so I won't be playing the stepmother role. You're her parent. I'm just sharing space." Evan nodded slowly. "And in public?" "In public, we're a couple. Married, in love, united. I have events approximately twice a month. Charity galas, corporate dinners, occasionally a wedding or funeral. You'll attend those with me. Otherwise, you're free to live your life." "What about Lily, when we're at these events?" "I have a vetted babysitter already arranged. Vera's daughter. She's 22, has CPR certification, and excellent references." Of course she did. Mara Vance didn't do anything halfway. "When's the wedding?" Evan asked. 3 weeks, Christmas Eve. Small ceremony, just immediate family, and a few key board members. I know it's fast, but the timeline serves my purposes." She took a sip of her coffee. "My family will be difficult, especially my brother." "The one who wants your job?" Mara's eyes sharpened. "You did your research. Google's free, and I figured if I'm marrying you, I should know what I'm walking into." Something that might have been respect flickered across her face. "Silas is the eldest. He believes the company should be his by birthright. Unfortunately for him, our father put me in charge because Silas has the business acumen of a golden retriever. He spent the last 5 years trying to undermine me, and my unmarried status has been his favorite weapon. My mother encourages this. She thinks Silas walks on water." "And your father?" "Dead. Heart attack 4 years ago." Her voice was flat, but Evan caught something underneath it. Grief, maybe, or anger. "He left controlling interest to me with one condition. I had to remain CEO for at least 7 years to prevent a hostile takeover. We're in year 5. Silas is getting desperate. So me marrying you removes one of his arguments. He's been saying I'm too emotional, too unstable, that I make poor decisions because I'm alone. A husband, especially one who isn't in the business, changes that narrative. Makes me look settled, mature, unassailable." Evan studied her over his coffee mug. In this light, with her guard partially down, he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of carrying an empire on her shoulders. "You said immediate family," he said. "Who else is there besides Silas and your mother?" "My younger sister, Claire. She's harmless, married to a venture capitalist, lives in California, mostly concerned with her interior design Instagram. She'll fly in for the wedding and probably cry through the whole ceremony because she's sentimental like that." Mara set down her mug. "They'll all want to meet you before the wedding. Dinner at my mother's house tomorrow night." "Tomorrow?" Evan's stomach dropped. "That's not much time to... To what? Prepare?" "Evan, there's no preparing for my family. They'll pick you apart no matter what you do. The only question is whether you break when they do it." "Comforting." "I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to warn you. My mother will smile at you while mentally calculating whether you're after my money. Silas will be openly hostile. Claire will ask inappropriate questions about our relationship because she has no filter. And through it all, you have to be convincing, loving. You have to make them believe this is real. Evan thought about that conference room, about signing his name on a contract that had turned his life inside out. What about you? Mara blinked. What about me? Do you have to be convincing too? Or do I carry this whole performance by myself? For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then, slowly, something shifted in her expression. Acknowledgement, maybe. Respect. Fair point, she said quietly. Yes, I'll have to sell it too. Which means we need to get to know each other, at least superficially. My mother will ask how we met, when I knew you were the one, what you love about me. You should probably have answers that don't make you sound like a hostage. Despite everything, Evan almost smiled. Should I take notes? Probably. Mara crossed to a drawer and pulled out a legal pad and pen, sliding them across the counter. Let's start simple. Where are you from? Nowhere, Texas. Little town you've never heard of. My dad was a mechanic. My mom was a waitress. They died when I was 20, car accident. My brother Daniel raised me after that. He's in Arizona now, married, 2 kids. Does he know about this arrangement? No, and he's not going to. As far as anyone knows, we met at work and fell for each other. That's it. Mara nodded. Good. Simple stories are easier to maintain. What about Lily's mother? Evan's jaw tightened. Christina left when Lily was 2. Said she couldn't handle being a mother. I raised Lily alone. Christina showed up again 6 months ago wanting custody. Why? New husband, new life, guilt, maybe? Or maybe she just wants to hurt me. I don't know anymore. Mara was quiet for a moment. My lawyer will handle the custody case. We'll bury Christina in paperwork and evidence that Lily's better off with you. By the time we're done, no judge will side with her. The casual ruthlessness of it should have disturbed Evan. Instead, he felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly knocked him over. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's in the contract. Besides, she paused, glanced toward the hallway where Lily's room was. That little girl deserves to stay with her father. Anyone can see that. It was the first genuinely kind thing Mara had said, and it caught Evan off guard. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Vera. Ms. Vance asked me to coordinate with you about Lily's care. I can stop by Monday morning to meet her and discuss her routine. Evan showed the text to Mara. You work fast. I don't believe in wasting time. She glanced at her watch. I have work to do. You and Lily should explore the building. There's a gym on the 10th floor, a pool on 15, a library on 12. Familiarize yourself with the space. Tomorrow at 6, we leave for my mother's house. Wear something nice. I don't really have anything nice. Mara's eyes swept over him, assessing. My stylist will be here at 2 p.m. tomorrow. He'll handle it. You have a stylist? Evan, I have people for everything. You'll get used to it. She started to walk away, then stopped. One more thing. In public, you can call me Mara. In private, Ms. Vance is fine. It maintains boundaries. What should Lily call you? Whatever makes her comfortable. I'm not her mother. I'm not trying to be. Then she disappeared down another hallway, leaving Evan alone in the vast, perfect kitchen with a mug of expensive coffee and the growing realization that he'd stepped through the looking glass into a world that operated by rules he didn't understand. Lily appeared in the doorway, her rabbit under one arm. Daddy? Can we explore? Evan set down his mug and smiled at his daughter. Yeah, baby girl, let's go exploring. They spent the rest of the day discovering their new reality. The building was its own ecosystem. The gym had equipment Evan didn't recognize. The pool was Olympic-sized and empty midday Saturday. The library was all leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling books that looked like they'd never been opened. Lily pressed her nose against every window they passed, marveling at the city below. In the evening, they ordered pizza from a place that charged $25 for a large and delivered it in a box that looked like jewelry packaging. Lily ate 3 slices sitting cross-legged on the floor of her new room, tomato sauce on her chin, chattering about the butterflies she was going to see in summer. Evan tucked her into bed at 8:30, and she was asleep before he finished the first page of her favorite bedtime story. He stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her breathe, trying to convince himself this was real. When he finally retreated to his own room, which was twice the size of his old bedroom and had an ensuite bathroom with a shower that had 7 different settings, he found his duffel bags had been unpacked. His clothes hung in a walk-in closet that had more space than his entire old apartment. On the dresser sat a folder labeled Evan Cole, Orientation. Inside were building access information, emergency contacts, Vera's schedule, the name and number of Mara's lawyer handling the custody case, and a credit card with his name embossed on it. The attached note, in Mara's precise handwriting, read, "For household expenses and Lily's needs. No limit. Keep receipts for tax purposes. MV." Evan stared at that credit card for a long time. No limit. He'd spent his entire adult life counting pennies, calculating if he could afford an extra gallon of milk, choosing between paying the electric bill and buying Lily new shoes. And now he held a piece of plastic that represented infinite resources. It felt like a trap. It felt like freedom. He wasn't sure which terrified him more. His phone buzzed. Text from Mara. "Lily's pediatrician appointment is scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. Dr. Sarah Chen, best in the city. James will drive you. Medical card is in your folder." Evan texted back, "You didn't have to do that." The response came immediately. "Yes, I did. It's in the contract. Sleep well." Evan lay in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud, in a room where the city lights filtered through automated blinds, in a life that didn't feel like his own. Tomorrow he'd meet Mara's family. In 3 weeks, he'd marry her. In 1 year, this would all be over, and he'd walk away with money and freedom, and Lily would be safe. 1 year. He could survive anything for 1 year, couldn't he? The next day arrived with the kind of relentless brightness that only December in California could manage. Evan woke to find Lily already up, sitting in her window seat and watching the city wake below her. She looked so small in that big room, so fragile and perfect, that his chest hurt. "Morning, baby girl." "Daddy, there are birds outside, real birds, up this high." They had breakfast together. Mara was nowhere to be seen, though Evan could hear faint sounds from another wing of the penthouse that suggested she was awake and working. A woman appeared at 9 o'clock, introduced herself as Vera, and immediately began fussing over Lily with the kind of warm efficiency that made Evan like her instantly. "Ms. Vance told me this little one likes pancakes," Vera said, her accent vaguely Eastern European. "I brought ingredients. We make them together, yes?" Lily looked at Evan for permission. He nodded, and she followed Vera to the kitchen like she'd found a new grandmother. At 2 o'clock sharp, the stylist arrived. His name was Marcus, not to be confused with Marcus from maintenance. Evan's brain helpfully supplied, and he took one look at Evan and sighed dramatically. "Darling, we have work to do." For the next 2 hours, Evan was measured, critiqued, and dressed in clothes that felt foreign on his body. Suits in charcoal and navy, shirts in shades of blue and white, shoes that were somehow more comfortable than his work boots despite costing 10 times as much. Marcus circled him like a shark, adjusting collars and cuffs, muttering about good bones and natural shoulders. "You clean up well," Marcus finally declared. "Mara has excellent taste in projects." "I'm a project?" "Darling, we're all projects." Marcus packed up his equipment. "Wear the navy suit tonight. It makes your eyes look less terrified." When he was gone, Evan studied himself in the full-length mirror. The man looking back was a stranger, polished, put together, like he belonged in this world. But underneath the expensive fabric, he was still just Evan Cole, maintenance worker, drowning man who'd taken a devil's bargain. Mara appeared in his doorway at 5:30. She wore a dress in deep green that probably cost more than a used car, her hair swept up, her makeup subtle but perfect. She looked every inch the CEO, the woman who commanded boardrooms and crushed competitors. "You look acceptable," she said, which was apparently the best compliment he was going to get. "The car leaves in 20 minutes. Lily's staying here with Vera's daughter, Emma. I've already introduced them. Lily seems comfortable." "Should I be nervous?" Evan asked. "Probably." Mara's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "But don't let them see it. My family respects strength, not vulnerability. Remember, we're in love, we're united, we're unshakable. No pressure. Evan, if I thought you couldn't handle this, I wouldn't have chosen you." And somehow, impossibly, that helped. The drive to Mara's mother's house took 40 minutes, climbing up into hills even wealthier than the ones where the penthouse stood. The houses here were estates, gated, sprawling, the kind of places that had names instead of addresses. James pulled through a gate with an actual security guard and up a driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges. The house was a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, lit from within so it glowed against the darkening sky. Evan could see people moving inside, hear the faint sound of classical music drifting out. "Remember," Mara said as James opened her door, "they're going to test you, push you, try to make you crack. Don't." "What if I do?" She looked at him with those amber eyes, and for just a moment he saw something real in them. Fear, maybe. Or something close to it. "Then we both lose everything." Before Evan could respond, the front door opened and a woman swept out. She was in her 60s, perfectly preserved, wearing diamonds and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mara's mother. "Darling!" The woman air-kissed Mara's cheeks. "You're late, and this must be the mysterious Evan." "Mother, this is Evan Cole, my fiancé." Mara took Evan's hand, and he was startled by how cold her fingers were. "Evan, my mother, Victoria Vance." Victoria's eyes swept over him like a customs agent searching for contraband. "How unexpected." Come in, come in. Everyone's dying to meet you." As they followed Victoria into the house, Mara's grip on Evan's hand tightened fractionally. It was the only sign she gave that she was anything other than perfectly composed. But Evan felt it, felt her hand trembling just slightly in his, and realized with a start that she was just as terrified as he was. The house interior was exactly what Evan expected. More art, more marble, more money than he could process. Victoria led them through a foyer that echoed with their footsteps into a living room where several people waited like a firing squad. A man in his mid-40s stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, watching them with cold calculation. Silas had to be. He had Mara's bone structure, but none of her warmth, what little she had of it. Next to him stood a younger woman, blonde and pretty, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Claire, the emotional sister. "Everyone, this is Evan," Victoria announced. "Mara's fiancé." The way she said it made it sound like a disease. Silas stepped forward first, extending a hand. His grip was too firm, a power play. "Evan, interesting, very interesting. I don't believe we've heard anything about you until very recently." "It was rather sudden," Mara said smoothly, her voice ice. "When you know, you know." "How romantic," Silas said flatly. "And what is it you do, Evan?" Here it was, the first test. Evan met Silas's eyes steadily. "I work in building maintenance. At Vance Industries, actually. That's how we met." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Victoria's expression froze. Silas's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Maintenance," he repeated. "How egalitarian of you, Mara, going slumming with the help." Evan felt Mara stiffen beside him. But before she could respond, he squeezed her hand gently and spoke. "I fix things when they break," he said calmly. "Make sure systems keep running. Make sure nothing falls apart." He paused meaningfully. "Seems like a useful skill in any organization." Silas's eyes narrowed. Claire giggled nervously, and Mara's fingers relaxed slightly in his. "Well," Victoria said briskly, "shall we move to dinner? I'm sure we all have many questions for Evan." It was going to be a very long night. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have hosted a small wedding, with a table long enough to require strategic seating arrangements. Victoria positioned herself at the head with Mara to her right and Silas to her left, forcing Evan to sit next to Claire, who immediately latched onto him like he was her new favorite reality show. "So, maintenance," Claire said, her voice bright and curious. "That's so real, so grounded. I mean, most of the men Mara dates are all hedge fund this and venture capital that. It's exhausting, but you actually work with your hands?" "Claire," Mara warned. "What?" "I'm just saying it's refreshing." Claire turned back to Evan, her eyes sparkling with wine and gossip hunger. "How did you two actually meet? Like, what's the story? Because Mara never tells me anything, and I need details." Evan glanced at Mara, who gave him the smallest nod. They'd rehearsed this in the car, a story simple enough to remember, romantic enough to sell. I was fixing an air conditioning unit on her floor, Evan said. She came out of a meeting, saw me working, and we started talking. She asked me about the system, how it worked. Most executives don't care about that kind of thing, but she was genuinely interested. I appreciate competence, Mara added. And Evan knows those systems better than the engineers who designed them. How flattering, Silas interjected, his tone making it clear he found it anything but. And this conversation about air conditioning led to romance? It led to more conversations, Evan said evenly. We'd run into each other, talk about work, about life. I told her about my daughter. She told me about the pressure of running a company. We understood each other. Understood each other, Silas repeated, swirling his wine. That's one way to put it. Tell me, Evan, do you understand the intricacies of corporate governance, shareholder relations, the fiduciary responsibilities of a CEO? Silas, Victoria said sharply, don't be rude. I'm not being rude, Mother. I'm being practical. Mara's personal life affects the company. If she's marrying someone who doesn't understand the world she operates in, I don't need to understand corporate governance to understand her, Evan interrupted. He kept his voice calm but firm. I know she works 16-hour days. I know she carries the weight of thousands of employees on her shoulders. I know she's brilliant and driven and doesn't suffer fools. And I know that when she's with me, she can breathe. The table went silent. Mara's eyes met his across the space between them, something unreadable flickering in their amber depths. Claire broke the silence with a small sob. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Oh my God, I'm crying again. You're always crying, Silas muttered. Because I have feelings, unlike some people at this table. Claire dabbed at her eyes. Evan, ignore my brother. He's threatened by anything he can't control, and apparently that includes Mara's happiness. I'm not threatened, Silas said coldly. I'm concerned. There's a difference. Concerned about what? Mara's voice cut through the tension like a blade. My ability to run the company? Because last quarter's numbers speak for themselves. Or are you concerned that I might actually have a personal life that doesn't revolve around board meetings and power plays? I'm concerned that you're making decisions with your heart instead of your head, Silas replied. It's not like you, Mara. You've always been calculating, strategic, and suddenly you're marrying a man you barely know, a man with no connections, no resources, no what, Silas? No pedigree, no trust fund? Say what you really mean. Silas set down his wine glass with deliberate care. Fine. I think this engagement is suspiciously convenient. You've been fielding questions about stability, about succession planning, about whether you're too isolated to lead effectively. And suddenly, 3 weeks before the shareholders' meeting, you produce a fiancé. It's too neat. Evan felt Mara tense beside him, saw her hand tighten on her fork. Before she could respond, he spoke up. You're right, he said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Mara's eyes widened fractionally. You're right that it's convenient, Evan continued. And you're right that I don't have connections or resources or whatever else you think matters. But you're wrong about why she's marrying me. He looked directly at Silas. Mara doesn't need me to prove anything to the board. She doesn't need me to run the company. She needs me because she's been alone for too long, carrying too much. And she finally found someone who sees her as a person instead of a corporation. How noble, Silas said. Silas. And what do you get out of this arrangement, Evan, besides access to her considerable wealth? Silas! Victoria's voice was sharp. That's enough. No, it's fine, Evan said. He leaned back in his chair, meeting Silas's cold gaze. You want to know what I get? I get to wake up next to someone who challenges me, who makes me want to be better. I get to watch my daughter have opportunities I could never give her alone. And I get to be part of Mara's life, which is honestly more than I ever thought I deserved. The honesty of it surprised even him, because somewhere in the performance, in the words they'd rehearsed and the story they'd constructed, something true had slipped through. He did want those things. Maybe not in the way he was describing, not yet, but the wanting was real. Mara was staring at him, her expression carefully blank, but her hand found his under the table and squeezed once. Quickly. A thank you, or maybe a warning, he couldn't tell. Claire was crying again, full-on sobbing into her napkin. Mother, they're perfect. Tell Silas to stop being a monster. I'm being realistic, Silas countered, but some of the edge had left his voice. Someone has to protect the family interests. The family interests are fine, Mara said icily. Better than fine. And my personal life is not up for board approval. Everything you do is up for scrutiny when you're the CEO, Silas shot back. You know that. Father knew that. It's the price of power. Father also knew when to trust people, Mara said softly. Something you've never learned. The reference to their father shifted something in the room's atmosphere. Silas's expression tightened. Victoria looked away. Even Claire stopped crying, sensing the sudden dangerous ground. Ladies, Victoria said with forced brightness, why don't we adjourn to the sitting room for coffee? The men can have their cigars or whatever it is men do. I don't smoke, Evan said. Of course you don't, Silas murmured. They separated, the women drifting toward one room while Silas gestured for Evan to follow him to a study that smelled of leather and old money. The moment the door closed, Silas's polite mask dropped completely. Let's dispense with the performance, he said, pouring himself a scotch without offering one to Evan. I know what this is. Evan's heart kicked against his ribs, but he kept his expression neutral. What is? This marriage, this convenient arrangement. Mara's not in love with you. She's incapable of that kind of sentiment. She's using you to shore up her position. The question is, what did she offer you to play along? You're wrong, Evan said evenly, about her being incapable of love. Am I? Has she told you she loves you? Silas moved closer, his eyes searching Evan's face. Has she shown you any genuine affection when the cameras aren't rolling, or is she the same ice queen in private that she is in the boardroom? Evan thought about the past 36 hours, about Mara's careful distance, her clinical approach to their arrangement, the way she spoke about boundaries and contracts, about the look in her eyes when she'd crouched down to talk to Lily, soft, almost vulnerable, about her cold hand trembling in his as they'd walked into this house. She's complicated, Evan said. That doesn't make her incapable of feeling. Silas laughed, a harsh sound. You actually believe that? How refreshing. Tell me, Evan, what happens when you discover that Mara only cares about one thing, the company? When you realize that every decision she makes, every person she lets into her life, is calculated to benefit Vance Industries. Then I guess I'll have to make myself useful to the company, Evan replied. And when she's done with you, when this marriage has served its purpose and she moves on to her next strategic advantage? Then I'll deal with it. Evan met Silas's gaze steadily. Look, I get it. You don't trust her. You don't trust me. You think this whole thing is a power play. Maybe it is. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm here, I'm marrying her, and you're going to have to live with it. We'll see how long that lasts, Silas said softly. My sister is very good at getting what she wants. The question is whether you'll survive being one of her tools. Before Evan could respond, the door opened and Mara appeared, her expression tight. We're leaving. So soon? Silas smiled. And here Evan and I were just getting to know each other. I'm sure you were. Mara's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Evan, let's go. They said their goodbyes. Victoria all false warmth, Claire teary promises to help with wedding planning, Silas watching them with calculation in his eyes. The drive back to the penthouse was silent, tense, Mara staring out the window at the city sliding past. When they finally reached the apartment, Emma reported that Lily had gone to bed an hour ago without any problems. Mara paid her, thanked her, and the moment the girl was gone, she poured herself a drink from the bar in the living room. That went about as well as expected, she said, downing half the glass in one swallow. Your brother thinks this is fake, Evan said. My brother thinks everything I do is manipulation. He's not entirely wrong. She refilled her glass. But he can't prove anything. That's what matters. He's going to try. Let him try. I've been dealing with Silas's attempts to undermine me for 5 years. This is nothing new. Evan crossed to where she stood, took the glass from her hand and set it down. She looked at him, surprised. You're allowed to admit that was hard, he said quietly. You don't have to pretend it didn't get to you. I'm not pretending anything. Yes, you are. You've been pretending since the moment we walked into that house, pretending you're unshakable, unaffected, invulnerable. but I felt your hand shaking when we walked in." Mara pulled back slightly, her walls slamming back into place. "That's not... I wasn't... It's okay to be human, Mara." "Ms. Vance," she corrected sharply. "In private, it's Ms. Vance. We agreed." "Right. Ms. Vance." Evan stepped back, giving her space. "My mistake." She turned away, arms wrapped around herself. "This arrangement works because we maintain boundaries. Don't confuse playing a role with actual intimacy." "I wasn't." "Weren't you?" She glanced back at him. "Those things you said at dinner about understanding me, about seeing me as a person, that was good performance, very convincing, but don't start believing your own fiction." Evan should have agreed, should have nodded and retreated to his room and remembered this was a business arrangement, nothing more. But something about the rigid set of her shoulders, the defensive edge in her voice, made him push. "What if it wasn't fiction?" he asked. Mara went very still. "What? What if some of what I said was true? Would that be so terrible?" "Yes," she said immediately, "because this works precisely because it's not real. The moment either of us starts having actual feelings, the arrangement becomes complicated, messy, dangerous." "Dangerous how?" She turned to face him fully, her expression hard. "Dangerous because feelings lead to expectations. Expectations lead to disappointment. And disappointment leads to someone getting hurt. I'm offering you a clean transaction, a year of your life for financial security and a fresh start. Don't ruin it by wanting more." "I'm not, aren't you?" "I saw the way you looked at Lily's room, the way you looked at me when you thanked me for handling the custody case. You're already starting to see this as something it's not, as rescue instead of contract, as romance instead of strategy." Evan felt heat rise in his chest. "You're the one who told me to be convincing. In public, not in private, not in your own head." She moved toward him, her eyes fierce. "Listen to me carefully, Evan. I chose you because you had nothing to lose and everything to gain, because I thought you'd be desperate enough to follow the rules and smart enough not to complicate things. Don't prove me wrong. And if I do, then this ends immediately and you go back to drowning." The threat hung in the air between them, sharp and unambiguous. Evan felt anger flare, at her coldness, at the casual way she wielded her power, at the reminder that he was utterly dependent on her goodwill. "Understood," he said flatly. "Is that all, Ms. Vance?" Something flickered in her eyes, regret maybe, or recognition that she'd pushed too hard, but her voice remained firm. "That's all. Good night, Evan." He left her standing in the living room with her drink and her walls and whatever demons drove her to guard herself so fiercely. In his room, he checked on Lily, fast asleep, peaceful, oblivious to the adult complications swirling around her. Then he lay in his expensive bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to untangle what had just happened. Mara was right, of course. He was starting to feel something beyond gratitude, beyond the transactional nature of their arrangement. He'd felt it when she'd prepared Lily's room with such care, felt it when she'd defended him at dinner, her voice sharp with genuine anger, felt it when her hand had trembled in his. He was feeling something, and that was dangerous, because at the end of this year, he'd have to walk away. And walking away from someone you'd started to care about was infinitely harder than walking away from a business arrangement. He needed to be more careful, needed to remember this was temporary, that Mara Vance was his employer first, and everything else a distant second. Needed to protect himself and Lily from the inevitable moment when this fairy tale ended and they returned to reality, even if that reality now came with a hefty bank balance. But as Evan drifted towards sleep, his last thought was of Mara's face when he'd told her brother that she needed someone who saw her as a person. The way her mask had slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw underneath. Maybe he wasn't the only one in danger of catching feelings. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and performance. True to her word, Mara's lawyer buried Christina in paperwork, providing evidence of Evan's improved circumstances, character references, and documentation of Lily's happiness and stability. The custody hearing was postponed, twice, as Christina's lawyer scrambled to counter the onslaught. Lily thrived. She started at a new school, private and prestigious, where the other children had names like Madison and Braden, and nobody asked why her clothes came from Target. She made friends. She took swimming lessons in the building's pool. She learned to love the rooftop garden, spending hours examining flowers and waiting for spring butterflies. And slowly, carefully, she started to warm to Mara. It happened in small moments. Mara working at the dining room table while Lily colored nearby, the two of them existing in comfortable silence. Mara explaining the stock market when Lily asked why she was always looking at numbers. Mara showing up at Lily's school play, a last-minute production where Lily played a flower, sitting in the audience with an expression of careful interest. "Did you see me?" Lily asked afterward, bouncing with excitement. "You were the most convincing flower in the entire garden," Mara said seriously, and Lily had beamed. Evan watched these interactions with growing confusion. Mara had said she wasn't comfortable with children, wasn't trying to be a mother figure, but her actions suggested something different, suggested that maybe, underneath all that ice, was someone who wanted connection but didn't know how to ask for it. They practiced for the wedding, practiced walking down an aisle, practiced saying vows that felt uncomfortably sincere, practiced kissing for the officiant's pronouncement. That last part was awkward, both of them approaching it like a choreographed dance move until the wedding coordinator threw up her hands. "You're getting married, not signing a business contract. Put some feeling into it." If she only knew. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear, the kind of winter day that California did better than anyone expected. The ceremony was at Victoria's house, of course it was, in the garden that had been transformed into something out of a magazine with white roses and twinkling lights and chairs for exactly 43 people. Evan stood at the altar in a tuxedo that Marcus had insisted made him look like James Bond, watching guests arrive. Board members he'd never met, business associates whose names he'd memorized from Mara's briefing, Claire, already crying, Silas, watching everything with hawk eyes. And then Mara appeared. She wore a dress in ivory silk, simple and elegant, her hair swept up to reveal the graceful line of her neck. No veil, no train, no excessive flourishes. Just Mara, beautiful and terrifying, walking toward him with steady steps and an expression that gave nothing away. When she reached him, she handed her bouquet to Claire and took his hands. Her fingers were ice cold. "You look beautiful," Evan whispered, because it seemed like the thing to say. "You look nervous," she whispered back. "I am nervous." "Don't be. It's just performance." But as the officiant began speaking about love and commitment and binding two lives together, Evan found himself listening to the words. Really listening. Thinking about what they meant, about the promises being made even in the context of their arrangement. When it came time for vows, Mara went first. Her voice was steady, clear, hitting every note they'd rehearsed. But when she promised to honor him, to stand beside him, to be his partner in all things, Evan saw something flicker in her eyes, something that looked almost like hope. Then it was his turn. He'd memorized the vows, practiced them until they were smooth, but standing there, looking into Mara's amber eyes with 43 people watching and Lily sitting in the front row in her purple dress, the rehearsed words died in his throat. "Mara," he began, and saw her expression tighten fractionally at the use of her first name. "3 weeks ago, you gave me a chance when I had nothing left to lose. You gave my daughter a future when I couldn't see past the next bill. You've been kind when you didn't have to be, patient when I was stumbling, and stronger than anyone I've ever met." He paused, aware he was going off script, but unable to stop. "I know this isn't what either of us planned. I know it's complicated and strange and probably crazy. But I promise you this. I will show up. I will be present. I will honor whatever this is we're building, even if neither of us knows what it looks like yet. And I will do everything in my power to make sure you never regret taking a chance on a broke maintenance worker who didn't know the first thing about your world." The garden was silent. Claire was sobbing into her husband's shoulder. Several board members looked confused. Silas's expression was unreadable, and Mara was staring at Evan like he'd just detonated a bomb in the middle of her carefully constructed plan. "I do," she whispered, though the officiant hadn't asked yet. "You may now kiss the bride," the officiant said quickly, sensing the moment. Evan pulled Mara close, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Her hands came up to rest against his chest, and when their lips met, it wasn't the chaste, performative kiss they'd practiced. It was real. It was searching, questioning. A conversation without words about what they were doing and where this was going and whether either of them was brave enough to find out. When they finally broke apart, Mara's eyes were wide. Her carefully controlled expression cracked. "That wasn't the plan," she breathed. "I know. We're supposed to be, I know." "Then why?" "Because maybe," Evan said quietly, "we both deserve something more than just a contract." Before Mara could respond, applause erupted. They turned to face their audience, Claire hysterical with joy, board members clapping politely, Silas watching them with new intensity. Lily was on her feet, clapping wildly, and when she caught Evan's eye, she mouthed, "You look like a prince, Daddy." They walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, legally bound, contractually obligated, and suddenly, terrifyingly, possibly feeling something real. The reception was a blur of champagne toasts and careful conversations, Mara's hand in his as they moved through the crowd, playing their parts perfectly. But every time their eyes met, Evan saw the same question reflected back at him. What the hell had they just done? Later, after the guests had gone and they'd returned to the penthouse, after Lily had been tucked into bed clutching the bouquet Mara had given her, Evan found Mara on the balcony. She still wore her wedding dress, a wrap around her shoulders against the December chill, staring out at the city that never quite slept. "You went off script," she said without turning around. "I know. Those vows, that kiss, that wasn't what we agreed to." "I know. Then why?" She turned to face him, and in the city lights he could see confusion and fear and something else in her expression. "Why did you do that?" Evan moved closer, careful not to crowd her. "Because standing there, looking at you, promising to honor you, it stopped feeling like acting. It started feeling like truth." "That's dangerous, Evan." "You keep saying that, but maybe dangerous isn't always bad. It is when it ends in a year. Who says it has to end?" The question hung between them, enormous and impossible. Mara shook her head slowly. "The contract, forget the contract. What do you want?" "I want..." She trailed off, her walls warring with something else, something vulnerable. "I don't know. I've spent so long protecting myself, building defenses, making sure no one could hurt me. And then you show up with your daughter and your honesty and your stupid belief that I'm capable of being more than just a CEO. You are more than that. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Then let me know you." Evan reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away. "We have a year, Mara. What if we use it to figure out if this could be real instead of just pretending? And if it doesn't work? If we try and fail? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't waste a year hiding from something that might have been extraordinary." Mara was quiet for a long moment, and Evan could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear against hope. Control against chaos. The life she'd built against the life she might want. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to do this. The real version. I'm good at contracts and negotiations and managing expectations. But actual feelings? Actual vulnerability? I'm terrible at it." "Good thing you've got a year to practice." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "You're impossible." "I've been told that before." She looked at him for a long moment, then reached up and touched his face with trembling fingers. "Okay. Okay? We try. We figure it out. We see if this can be more than just an arrangement." She took a breath. "But slowly, carefully, because I am genuinely terrified of this, Evan." "Me too." "Really? You seem so calm." "I'm panicking internally. I'm just better at hiding it than you are right now." That did make her smile, a real one that transformed her face. "Fair enough." They stood there on the balcony, the city spread below them, husband and wife-in-law, and maybe, possibly, starting to become something more in reality. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was the end of the contract and the beginning of something neither of them knew how to name. Inside, Lily stirred in her sleep, dreaming of butterflies and gardens. And in the morning, they would wake to the first day of their marriage. Not the one they'd planned, but the one they were choosing. Together. The morning after the wedding arrived with unexpected gentleness. Evan woke to find Lily already awake, sitting at the foot of his bed with her stuffed rabbit and an expression of deep contemplation. "Daddy, are you really married now?" she asked. Evan sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Yeah, baby girl, I really am." "Does that mean Mara is my new mom?" The question hit him like a freight train. They hadn't discussed this, how to explain their arrangement to a 6-year-old who deserved honesty but couldn't handle the whole truth. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Mara and I are married, but she's not trying to replace your mom. Maybe think of her as someone who cares about us, someone who's part of our family now." Lily considered this seriously. "I like her. She showed me her office yesterday and let me sit in her big chair, and she knows all about butterflies. Did you know some butterflies only live for 2 weeks?" "I didn't know that." "Mara says that's why they're so beautiful, because they don't have time to waste being ordinary." Lily hugged her rabbit. "I think that's sad, but also kind of nice." Evan pulled his daughter close, marveling at the way children could find profundity in simple conversations. "Yeah, it is." When they emerged from the bedroom, they found Mara already at the dining table with her laptop and coffee, dressed in casual clothes that made her look younger, more approachable. She glanced up as they entered, and something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or the morning after realization of what they'd agreed to on that balcony. "Good morning," she said carefully. "Morning," Evan replied. "Coffee smells good." "Vera brought fresh pastries, too. They're in the kitchen." Mara's eyes moved to Lily. "There are chocolate croissants. I remembered you liked chocolate." Lily's face lit up. She started toward the kitchen, then paused and ran back to Mara, throwing her small arms around Mara's shoulders in an impulsive hug. "Thank you for the croissants, and for yesterday. My dress made me feel like a princess." Mara went rigid for a moment, clearly unprepared for the physical affection. Then, slowly, her arms came up to return the hug, awkward but genuine. "You're welcome. You looked beautiful." Lily bounded off to the kitchen, leaving Evan and Mara alone. Mara stared after her, something complicated playing across her features. "I wasn't expecting that," she said quietly. "She's warming up to you." "I noticed," Mara looked at Evan, "about last night, what we said on the balcony. I haven't changed my mind, but I think we should establish some ground rules. If we're going to try this, whatever this is, we need structure." Of course she wanted structure. Evan poured himself coffee and sat across from her. "What kind of ground rules?" "First, Lily comes first. Always. Whatever happens between us, she doesn't get hurt." "Agreed." "Second, we're honest with each other. No games, no manipulation. If something bothers you, you say it. If I'm pushing too hard or being too cold, you tell me." "I can do that." "Third," Mara hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, "we go slow. I meant what I said about being terrible at this. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to default to walls and distance because that's what I know. You'll need to be patient with me." Evan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. She didn't pull away. "And you'll need to be patient with me. I've been alone since Christina left. I'm not exactly relationship material either. Then we're both disasters trying to figure this out together." "Sounds about right." Lily reappeared with a chocolate croissant, half of it already in her mouth. "Are you guys holding hands?" she asked through a mouthful of pastry. Evan and Mara both pulled back, caught. Lily giggled, "It's okay. You're supposed to hold hands. You're married now." Out of the mouths of babes. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Mara still worked constantly, but she started emerging from her home office for meals, started asking Lily about school, listening with genuine attention to rambling 6-year-old stories, started watching Evan when she thought he wasn't looking, her expression thoughtful and confused, like she was trying to solve an equation that refused to balance. They had their first real fight 3 weeks into January over something stupid. Evan had rearranged the kitchen because he couldn't find anything, and Mara had come home to discover her carefully organized system disrupted. "You can't just change things without asking," she said, her voice tight with control. "It's a kitchen, not a military installation. I needed to be able to cook without searching for 20 minutes to find a pan." Everything had a place. A logical, efficient place. For you, maybe. For normal humans, it was chaos. Mara's eyes flashed. Normal humans, so I'm abnormal for wanting organization? Evan realized too late he'd stepped on a landmine. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. You think I'm too controlled, too rigid, too incapable of just being casual and easy like everyone else. Mara's, Ms. Vance, we agreed. In private, it's, oh, for God's sake, we're married now. We're supposed to be trying to make this real. You can't hide behind formality every time you feel vulnerable. The words hung in the air, sharp and true. Mara stared at him, her chest rising and falling with agitation, her careful mask cracking. I'm not hiding, she said, but her voice wavered. Yes, you are. You've been hiding since Christmas Eve, since we kissed, and it meant something and you got scared. I'm not scared. You're terrified. And so am I. But we agreed to try, Mara. We agreed to be honest. She turned away, arms wrapped around herself in that defensive posture he was learning to recognize. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I don't know how to fight fair. I don't know how to argue without trying to win. My whole life has been about winning, about being smarter, stronger, more controlled than everyone else. And now you're here, calling me out, refusing to let me hide, and I don't know how to do this. Evan crossed to her slowly. Then we learn together. We mess up and apologize and try again. That's how relationships work. I've never had one that worked. Me neither. So we're even. She laughed, a sound halfway between amusement and despair. We're a disaster. Yeah, we are. He touched her shoulder gently. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the kitchen. I should have asked first. And I'm sorry for overreacting. It's not really about the kitchen, is it? Probably not. They stood there in the reorganized kitchen, two people trying to bridge the gap between a contract and something real, making progress in inches and stumbles. Mara, Evan said quietly, not Ms. Vance. When it's just us, when we're trying to be real, it's Mara, okay? She nodded slowly. Okay. When it's just us. February brought new challenges. Silas started asking questions, making comments at board meetings about the sudden marriage, about Mara's new domestic situation. He couldn't prove anything, but he was circling like a shark who'd smelled blood. He knows something's off, Mara said one evening, pacing the living room with restless energy. He's digging. I can feel it. Let him dig. What's he going to find? I don't know. That's what worries me. She turned to face Evan. We need to be more convincing, more public, more demonstrably in love. More than we already are. We barely leave the penthouse together. We attend events, yes, but we don't do normal couple things. We need to be seen at restaurants, galleries, parks. We need social media presence. We need to look like we're actually living our lives together instead of coexisting in the same space. Mara stopped pacing. Yes, exactly. So they started performing for a broader audience. Dinner at expensive restaurants where Mara's hand would rest on his arm, and Evan would lean in to whisper things that made her laugh. Gallery openings where they'd discuss art with the easy familiarity of longtime partners. A charity auction where Evan bid on and won a weekend getaway, presenting it to Mara with a flourish that had onlookers sighing. The strange thing was, the more they performed, the more real it became. The touches that started as performance lingered. The conversations that began for appearances deepened into actual connection. The laughter was genuine. One Saturday morning, Mara surprised them both by suggesting they take Lily to the zoo. I saw an advertisement for a butterfly pavilion, she explained, her voice almost defensive. I thought she might enjoy it. Lily was ecstatic. They spent the day surrounded by families, the three of them navigating the crowds with Lily between them, holding both their hands. When butterflies landed on Lily's outstretched fingers, she squealed with delight, and Mara captured the moment on her phone with an expression of such soft joy that Evan's breath caught. You're staring, Mara said without looking at him. You're beautiful when you smile like that. Like what? Like someone who's forgotten to guard herself. She did look at him then, the butterflies dancing around them, Lily chattering excitedly nearby. That's dangerous. You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you don't really believe it. I don't know what I believe anymore, she admitted. 3 months ago, you were a name on a list of potential candidates for a business arrangement. Now you're this, here, real. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. But the way she took his hand, threading her fingers through his, suggested maybe she was starting to find out. March brought spring and turbulence. Christina's lawyer made a final push for custody, bringing in a child psychologist to evaluate Lily's living situation. The woman spent 3 hours at the penthouse, observing, asking questions, taking notes. Lily showed her the butterfly room, as she now called her bedroom, and talked about school and swimming and Mara's butterfly garden. Is Mara your stepmother? The psychologist asked. Lily considered this seriously. She's married to my daddy, but she says she's not trying to be my mom. She's just Mara. That's okay with me. She's teaching me about business and butterflies and how to be strong even when you're scared. The psychologist's eyebrows rose. Mara teaches you about being scared? She says even grown-ups get scared sometimes. But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing things even when you are scared. Lily held her rabbit close. I think that's really smart. 2 weeks later, the psychologist's report came back. It recommended that Lily remain with her father in his current stable, nurturing environment. Christina's case collapsed. The custody battle was over. Evan found Mara on the balcony that evening. The city lights spread below like scattered diamonds. He handed her a glass of wine without speaking, and they stood together in comfortable silence. Thank you, he said finally, for everything, the lawyers, the report, the stability that made it possible. We wouldn't have won without you. You would have found a way. You're a good father, Evan. Any judge could see that. But you made it easier. You made it possible for Lily to have the kind of life she deserves. Mara was quiet for a moment. She's an extraordinary child, bright, kind, resilient. You did that. You raised her to be that person. We're doing it together now. The words slipped out before Evan could think about them, and he felt Mara stiffen beside him, but then she relaxed, her shoulder brushing against his. I suppose we are, she said softly. That wasn't part of the plan either, was it? I wasn't supposed to care about her. Wasn't supposed to look forward to her rambling stories or feel proud when she masters a new swimming stroke or worry when she has a nightmare. You care about her. I do. It's terrifying. I've spent so long not letting myself care about people. It's safer that way, easier. And now there's this little girl showing me pictures she drew and asking my opinion on which butterfly is the prettiest, and She trailed off, her voice catching. And you, what? And I love her. God help me, I love her. And I don't know what to do with that. Evan set down his wine glass and turned Mara to face him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, her careful control shattered. You just keep doing what you're doing. You show up for her. You teach her about butterflies and business and being brave. You let her love you back. What if I mess it up? What if I hurt her? You won't. You're too careful with her, too aware of what she needs. But in 9 months, when this ends, who says it has to end? Mara pulled back, her expression torn between hope and fear. The contract is just paper. We're not just paper anymore, Mara. You know that. I don't know anything. I'm so far outside my comfort zone, I can't even see it from here. Good. That means you're growing. She laughed shakily. I hate growth. It's messy and uncomfortable and terrifying. Welcome to being human. They stood there on the balcony, the wine forgotten, something shifting between them, something that had been building since Christmas Eve, since that kiss that was supposed to be performance, since the moment they decided to try making this real. I need to tell you something, Mara said quietly, and I need you to listen without interrupting, because if you interrupt, I'll lose my nerve. Evan nodded. I didn't choose you at random, she began. Yes, I needed someone who fit the criteria, someone without connections, someone desperate enough to agree, someone who wouldn't betray me. But I'd noticed you before, months before I made the offer. You were working on the executive floor one day, fixing something, and you took a phone call. From Lily, I assume. And the way you spoke to her, the gentleness, the patience, the absolute devotion in your voice, it made me stop and listen. She took a breath. I told myself it was just research, due diligence. But the truth is, I saw in you something I'd never had. Unconditional love. The ability to put someone else before yourself without resentment or calculation. And I wanted that. Not for myself, I didn't think I deserved it. But I wanted to understand it, to be near it. Evan started to speak, but she held up a hand. When I made you the offer, I told myself it was purely strategic, a solution to a problem. But part of me hoped that maybe, by being around you and Lily, I could learn what that kind of love looked like, how it felt, whether I was capable of it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And now I'm learning that I am capable of it, that I've been falling into it without realizing. And it's the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. The silence that followed was enormous. Evan could hear the city below, the distant sound of traffic, the whisper of wind across the balcony. He could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Are you saying what I think you're saying? He asked carefully. I don't know. What do you think I'm saying? That this stopped being an arrangement somewhere along the way, that you have feelings for me, real ones. Mara closed her eyes. Yes, God help me. Yes, I have feelings for you. I don't know when it happened or how to label them or what to do about them, but they're there. They're real. And I'm terrified you're going to tell me this was a mistake. Instead of answering, Evan cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Not the performative kiss from their wedding or the careful kisses they'd shared at public events. This was real, desperate and searching and honest. Mara made a small sound against his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara's eyes were wide and wondering. I've wanted to do that since Christmas Eve, Evan admitted. Really do it. Not for cameras or contracts or anyone else, just because I wanted to kiss my wife. Wife, Mara repeated like she was testing the word. That still feels surreal. We can make it real. We can decide right now that this isn't an arrangement anymore, that it's an actual marriage. What about the contract? Burn it. Tear it up. I don't care. I'm not here because of paper anymore, Mara. I'm here because of you. She searched his face, looking for lies or manipulation or any hint that this was performance. But Evan let her see everything, the fear and hope and growing love he'd been trying to deny. I don't know how to do this, she said again. We learn together. We make mistakes and fix them and keep trying. That's all anyone does. What if I'm too broken, too damaged by years of guarding myself? Then we work through it, together. Mara leaned into him, her forehead resting against his chest, and Evan wrapped his arms around her. They stood like that for a long time, two people who'd started as strangers bound by desperation, becoming something neither had planned but both desperately wanted. Daddy? Mara? They pulled apart to find Lily in the doorway, her rabbit under one arm, looking sleepy and confused. What are you doing out here? Just talking, Evan said. Lily patted over, and without hesitation, Mara crouched down and opened her arms. Lily walked into them, and Mara held her like she was precious, like she was worth protecting, like she was loved. Can't sleep? Mara asked softly. Bad dream, about my other mom. She was trying to take me away. That's not going to happen, Mara said firmly. The judge said you get to stay with your dad. With us. No one's taking you anywhere. Promise? I promise, and I don't make promises I can't keep. Lily smiled, satisfied, and yawned widely. Can you both tuck me in? They did, one on each side of Lily's bed, the three of them tangled together in something that looked remarkably like a family. Evan read the bedtime story while Mara stroked Lily's hair, and by the third page the little girl was asleep. In the hallway outside Lily's room, Mara took Evan's hand. So we're really doing this? Making this real? Yeah, we really are. This is insane. Probably. We're going to mess it up. Definitely. But we're trying anyway. Absolutely. Mara laughed, a sound of pure, unexpected joy. Okay then, let's be insane together. They walked to Mara's bedroom, which Evan had never entered in all these months, and stood at the threshold. This was a line they hadn't crossed, a boundary they'd maintained even as everything else shifted. I'm not ready for this, Mara said, gesturing to the room. I know, we don't have to rush. But I want you to know that I want to be ready, that I'm working toward it. That's enough. That's more than enough. They said goodnight with another kiss, softer this time, full of promise rather than desperation. And when Evan returned to his own room, he lay awake thinking about a woman who'd offered him a contract and was becoming his future. The next morning, everything felt different, lighter, more possible. Mara emerged from her office to have breakfast with them, staying even after Lily left for school to talk with Evan about nothing important. The custody case, the weather, a funny thing that had happened at a board meeting, normal conversation between two people learning to be partners. But their peace was short-lived. That afternoon, while Evan was picking up Lily from school, Mara received a call that made her blood run cold. Silas had found something. Or rather, someone had found something for him. A paparazzo had captured photos of Evan and Mara before their engagement was announced. Photos of them in that coffee shop near Vance Tower, where Evan had sat reading the contract. Photos time-stamped and dated, showing them together weeks before they'd claimed to have started dating. The photos themselves proved nothing, but they raised questions, and questions led to investigation. An investigation might lead to the contract hidden in Mara's private files. When Evan returned home with Lily, he found Mara in her office, staring at her computer screen with an expression of barely controlled panic. "We have a problem," she said. And just like that, their fragile peace shattered. The contract they'd been trying to transcend had come back to haunt them. And Silas, patient and ruthless, was closing in for the kill. Evan closed the office door carefully behind him, aware that Lily was in the living room watching cartoons and didn't need to hear this conversation. He moved to where Mara sat frozen at her desk, her face pale in the glow of the computer screen. "Show me," he said quietly. Mara turned the monitor toward him. The photos were damning in their innocence. Evan at that coffee shop table, the contract spread before him, his face a portrait of desperation and decision. Another photo showed Mara's car pulling away from the curb outside. The timestamps proved they were together weeks before their supposed first date. "How did Silas get these?" Evan asked. "He hired a private investigator. Has been for months, apparently. The investigator found the photographer, bought the photos, and now Silas is sitting on them like a loaded gun." Mara's voice was eerily calm, the kind of calm that came before breaking. "He called me this afternoon, didn't even pretend to be subtle. Said he has questions about the timeline of our relationship and wants to discuss them at the emergency board meeting he's called for Friday." Emergency board meeting? Can he do that? He can if he convinces enough board members that there's a crisis of leadership, which he's apparently been doing all week. Mara stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "He's going to present these photos. He's going to imply fraud, manipulation, a marriage of convenience designed to fool the board and shareholders. And then he's going to call for a vote of no confidence." Evan felt his stomach drop. "Would they vote against you?" "Some of them would love an excuse. I've made enemies. You can't run a company the way I do without bruising egos and stepping on toes. Silas has been working them, reminding them of every harsh decision I've made, every time I've prioritized profit over sentiment." She pressed her forehead against the glass. "If he proves the marriage is fake, if he can show I've been deceiving them about my personal stability, they'll turn on me." "Then we tell the truth." Mara laughed bitterly. "The truth? That I paid you to marry me? That sounds so much better." "Not that truth, the real truth." Evan crossed to her, gently turning her to face him. "We tell them that yes, the marriage started as an arrangement, but it became real, that we fell in love despite the circumstances, that what started as strategy became something genuine." "They'll never believe that." "Why not? It's true." Mara stared at him, her eyes searching his face. Is it really true, Evan? Because in 3 days, I'm going to stand in front of a boardroom full of sharks and tell them that I've fallen in love with my husband and I need to believe it myself before I can make them believe it." "Do you doubt it?" "I doubt everything right now. I doubt my judgment, my decisions, my ability to separate what I want from what I've convinced myself is real." Her voice cracked. "What if this is just another transaction? What if I'm incapable of anything else?" Evan cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. What we have isn't a transaction anymore. It stopped being one the moment you prepared Lily's room with butterflies because you'd been paying attention to what she loved. It stopped being one when you held my hand at your mother's house because you were scared. It stopped being one when you cried telling me you loved my daughter. Those could all just be me being thorough, playing the role. Could they? Could you fake the way you looked at Lily when that butterfly landed on her hand? Could you manufacture the vulnerability in your eyes last night when you told me you'd been falling without realizing it? Mara closed her eyes and tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know. I don't know what's real anymore. Then let me tell you what's real. Evan's voice was fierce, urgent. I'm in love with you. Not with the idea of you, not with the security you provide, not with the contract or the money or any of it. I'm in love with the woman who teaches my daughter about butterflies and business, the woman who reorganizes kitchens and panics about it, the woman who's terrified of being vulnerable but tries anyway. That's real, Mara. That's so real it terrifies me. She opened her eyes, and the raw hope in them nearly broke him. You love me? I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I was waiting for the right moment, and apparently the right moment is 3 days before your brother tries to destroy everything we've built. Despite everything, Mara laughed through her tears. Terrible timing. The worst. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you, Mara Vance. I love your brilliance and your brittleness and your stubborn refusal to give up even when you're drowning. I love the way you look at my daughter like she's precious. I love that you're scared right now because it means you care enough to be scared. Mara kissed him then, desperate and messy, her tears mixing with the kiss. I love you too. God, I love you so much it's destroying me. I've never felt like this, never wanted to feel like this, and now I can't imagine going back to who I was before you. They held each other in the failing afternoon light, two people who'd found something real in the middle of a lie, now facing the consequences of both. So what do we do? Evan asked finally. Mara pulled back, wiping her eyes, and he watched her transform, watched the CEO reassert herself, the strategist who'd built an empire. But this time there was something else underneath, something softer, more human. We fight, she said. We go into that boardroom and we tell them everything, the contract, the arrangement, how it started and how it changed. We give them the truth and trust that they'll see what's real. That's a hell of a gamble. I know, but I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be invulnerable. Maybe it's time the board sees that their CEO is human after all. She took his hand. Will you do it with me? Will you stand there and tell them your story? Our story, Evan corrected. And yes, I'll tell them everything. Even if it costs us everything? Even then. Because what we have is worth fighting for. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Mara's lawyer advised against full disclosure, warning that admitting to the contract could open them up to fraud charges. But Mara was resolute. They would tell the truth and face whatever came. Lily sensed the tension, growing quieter, more clingy. The night before the board meeting, she crawled into bed between Evan and Mara. They'd been spending nights together since their confession, learning each other slowly, carefully, and looked up at them with worried eyes. Are you guys okay? She asked. We're going through something difficult right now, Mara said honestly. They'd agreed not to lie to Lily, even to protect her. But we're going to handle it together. Is someone trying to hurt us? Someone is trying to hurt me, Mara corrected gently. My brother doesn't think I should run my company. He's going to try to convince other people to agree with him. That's mean. You're really good at your job. You're good at everything. Mara's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sweetheart. That means more than you know. If he's mean to you, Daddy will protect you. Right, Daddy? Evan pulled both of them close. Right. I'll always protect both of you. Good, Lily said, satisfied. She yawned and snuggled deeper between them. We're a family now. Families protect each other. After Lily fell asleep, Evan and Mara lay in the darkness, hands clasped, each lost in their own fears and hopes. Whatever happens tomorrow, Mara whispered, I want you to know that you've changed my life. You've made me believe I could be more than just the company, more than just my armor. Whatever happens, Evan replied, I want you to know I don't regret any of it. Not the contract, not the risk, not falling in love with you. I'd do it all again. Even if we lose? Even then. They made love that night with a tenderness edged with desperation, both aware that tomorrow might change everything. Afterward, holding each other in the dark, Mara spoke the words that had been building in her heart. "If they force me out," she said quietly, "if I lose the company, I think I'll be okay. Because I'll still have you and Lily, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough." "You won't lose this company," Evan said, but his certainty was more hope than conviction. "But if I do, then we figure it out. Together." Friday morning arrived with cruel brightness. Mara dressed in her armor, a charcoal suit that made her look simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. Evan wore the navy suit Marcus had chosen, the one that made him look like he belonged in her world. They drove to Vance Tower in silence, James at the wheel, the city sliding past the windows like a dream they were waking from. In the parking garage, before they went up, Mara turned to Evan. "Last chance to back out," she said. "You could say you didn't know about the contract initially, that I deceived you too. Save yourself." "Not a chance." "Evan, no. We're in this together, all the way." She kissed him, quick and fierce. "I love you. I love you too. Now let's go show them what we're made of." The boardroom was on the 74th floor, all glass walls and aggressive masculinity. 15 board members sat around a table that could have hosted a small country's peace negotiations. Silas sat at one end, looking like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. Victoria was there too, her expression unreadable. Various executives and company officers filled the remaining seats. Mara walked in like she owned the place, which, technically, she still did. Evan followed, acutely aware of the eyes tracking him, calculating his worth, judging his presence. "Thank you all for coming," Silas began, false courtesy dripping from every word. "I've called this meeting to address serious concerns about our CEO's judgment and transparency. Concerns that, I believe, impact her ability to lead this company." "Get to the point, Silas," Mara said coldly. "Very well." Silas pulled up the photos on the large screen behind him. Evan at the coffee shop, the contract visible, the timestamps damning. "These photos were taken 3 months before you announced your engagement to Mr. Cole. They show him reviewing what appears to be a legal document in a public place. Shortly after, your car was photographed leaving the scene." Murmurs rippled around the table. Board members leaned forward, interested now. "I've done some investigating," Silas continued. "Mr. Cole worked in building maintenance. He had significant debt, was facing eviction, and was losing a custody battle. Desperate circumstances, one might say. And then suddenly, 3 weeks after these photos were taken, he's engaged to our CEO. Living in her penthouse, debt mysteriously cleared, custody case won. It's quite a fairy tale." "What's your point?" Mara's voice was ice. "My point is that this marriage appears to be a transaction designed to make you look stable and settled, to address the board's concerns about your isolation and decision-making. It's manipulation, Mara. And if you're willing to manipulate the board, what else are you willing to manipulate?" The room erupted in conversation. Board members talking over each other, demanding answers, looking between Mara and Silas like spectators at a tennis match. Victoria banged her hand on the table. "Mara, is this true? Is your marriage a sham?" Mara stood, and the room fell silent. She looked small in that moment, vulnerable in a way Evan had never seen her in public. But when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "Yes," she said simply. "It started as a transaction." The room exploded. Silas smiled in triumph. Victoria pressed her hand to her mouth. Several board members started shouting about fraud and deception and fiduciary responsibility. "But that's not the whole story," Mara continued, raising her voice above the chaos. "And if you'll give me 5 minutes, I'll tell you exactly what happened and why." "This should be good," Silas murmured. Mara ignored him. 5 years ago, when I became CEO, I was 28 years old, unmarried, and facing a board that questioned whether I had the stability and maturity to lead. I've spent every day since proving myself, working longer hours, making harder decisions, sacrificing my personal life to show you I was worthy of my father's faith in me. She paused, gathering herself. But it was never enough. There were always questions, always doubts, always the suggestion that a woman alone couldn't possibly have the judgment needed to run a company this size. So yes, I made a calculated decision. I offered Evan Cole a contract, Marriage for 1 year in exchange for clearing his debts and providing stability for him and his daughter. This is exactly what I said, Silas started. I'm not finished, Mara cut him off. The contract was a business arrangement, cold, transactional, designed to solve both our problems. Evan needed money. I needed legitimacy. It should have been simple. She looked at Evan, and her expression softened. But life isn't simple. People aren't simple. Somewhere between signing that contract and standing here today, something changed. I fell in love with my husband, and he fell in love with me. Not because of the arrangement, but in spite of it. How convenient, Silas said dryly. Is it? Mara turned to face her brother. Is it convenient that I'm standing here risking everything I've built to tell you the truth? Is it convenient that I'm admitting to a strategy that could cost me this company? I could have hidden this. Could have destroyed the evidence, paid off the photographer, maintained the lie. But I'm choosing honesty because that's what Evan taught me. That authenticity matters more than armor. She addressed the full board now. You want to know if I'm fit to lead this company? Look at the numbers. Look at the growth, the expansion, the innovation we've achieved under my leadership. But also look at this. Look at a CEO who's finally learned that being human doesn't make you weak. That vulnerability can be strength. That love doesn't compromise judgment, it enhances it. This is absurd, Silas protested. She's admitted to fraud. I'm admitting to being human, Mara interrupted. To making an unorthodox decision that ended up being the best thing I've ever done. Not just for the company, but for me. Evan stood then, and all eyes turned to him. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. I'd like to say something, if I may. The maintenance man has an opinion, Silas sneered. How refreshing. Silas, shut up, Victoria said sharply, surprising everyone. Let him speak. Evan nodded gratefully. When Mara offered me that contract, I was drowning. I had nothing left to lose, so yes, I signed it. Yes, I took the money. Yes, I married her for reasons that had nothing to do with love. He paused. But that was 4 months ago. That was a different life. He moved to stand beside Mara, taking her hand. The woman standing next to me is the strongest person I've ever met. She's brilliant and demanding, and yes, sometimes difficult. She works too hard, guards herself too carefully, and has spent so long being what everyone else needs that she's forgotten how to be what she needs. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. This was getting personal in a way boardrooms rarely did. But she's also kind, Evan continued. She prepared a room for my 6-year-old daughter with butterflies stenciled on the walls because she'd listened to a rambling story about Lily's favorite things. She stood up for me in front of her family when they tried to make me feel small. She holds my daughter when she has nightmares and teaches her about being brave even when you're scared. He looked at Mara, and the love in his eyes was unmistakable. I didn't plan to fall in love with her. I tried not to, actually. Because I knew it would complicate everything, knew it would hurt when this year ended, and I had to walk away. But you can't control love. It happens anyway. And I am completely, hopelessly in love with my wife. The boardroom was silent now. Even Silas seemed at a loss for words. So yes, Evan finished, the marriage started as a contract. But it's real now. We're real. And if you fire her for having the courage to be honest about that, then this company doesn't deserve her anyway. He sat down, his heart pounding, aware that he'd just burned every bridge he had. Beside him, Mara squeezed his hand so hard it hurt. Victoria was the first to speak. Mara, is what he said true? About the butterflies and the nightmares and all of it? Yes, Mara said quietly. All of it. Victoria looked at her daughter for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Something that might have been understanding. You love him. I do. And you, Evan? You love my daughter? More than I knew was possible. Victoria turned to Silas. You wanted to prove she was unstable, that her judgment was compromised. Instead, you've proved she's capable of something I wasn't sure she'd ever allow herself, being vulnerable enough to love. Mother, this is ridiculous. No, Silas. What's ridiculous is your transparent attempt to seize power you haven't earned. Victoria's voice was sharp with decades of frustrated ambition channeled into her children's lives. I've watched you undermine your sister for 5 years, and I've stayed silent because I thought you'd eventually prove yourself worthy. But this, attacking her for finding happiness, for being human, this is beneath even you. She stood, addressing the board. "I've known about the contract since the beginning." The room erupted again. Mara's face went white. "What? You think you're the only one with sources in this company?" Victoria looked at her daughter with something approaching pride. "I've known for months. Mara's assistant is loyal, but she's also careful. She came to me after the wedding, concerned that the arrangement might damage Mara professionally. She showed me the contract." "Then why didn't you—" Mara started. "Because I wanted to see what you'd do with it, whether you'd hide behind the arrangement or transform it into something real." Victoria's smile was small but genuine. "I'm proud to say you did the latter, and I'll be damned if I let your brother destroy you for it." She turned to the board. "I move that we table Silas's no-confidence vote and instead discuss his fitness for his current position. His witch hunt tactics and personal vendettas are exactly the kind of judgment issues we should be concerned about." The shift in the room was palpable. Board members who'd been ready to crucify Mara were suddenly reassessing, looking at Silas with new suspicion. A few even nodded in agreement with Victoria. "You can't be serious," Silas said, his composure finally cracking. "She admitted to fraud. She admitted to an unorthodox personal arrangement that became genuine," one of the board members said, Harold Chen, who'd been with the company since Mara's father's time. "There's no fraud here, Silas. No manipulation of company resources or shareholder value. Just a young woman trying to navigate the impossible standards we place on female CEOs. Another board member spoke up. "I've worked with Mara for 3 years. Her personal life has never once compromised her professional judgment. If anything, she seems more balanced now, more decisive." The tide was turning. Evan watched in amazement as board member after board member spoke in Mara's defense, some grudgingly, others with genuine respect. Silas's face grew redder with each statement, his carefully constructed case crumbling. Finally, Victoria called for a vote. "All in favor of maintaining Mara Vance as CEO?" 12 hands went up. 3 abstained. Silas sat alone in his opposition. "Motion carries," Victoria said. "Mara remains CEO. Silas, I suggest you take some time to reconsider your priorities. This company doesn't have room for sabotage." The meeting adjourned in chaos, board members filing out in clusters of heated conversation. Silas stormed past without looking at anyone. Victoria approached Mara and Evan, her expression softer than either had ever seen it. "I meant what I said," she told Mara. "I'm proud of you. Your father would be too." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "You really knew? All this time?" "All this time. And I watched you fall in love despite your best efforts to maintain control. It was quite beautiful, actually." Victoria turned to Evan. "Take care of her. She's not as invincible as she pretends." "I know," Evan said. "I will." After Victoria left, Mara and Evan stood alone in the empty boardroom. The city spread below them, their future suddenly wide open. "We survived," Mara said wonderingly. "We did more than survive. We won." "No, we didn't win. We just didn't lose." She turned to face him. "But I did gain something." "What's that?" "Freedom. For the first time in my life, I don't have to pretend to be invincible. I can just be me. Messy, vulnerable, complicated me." "I like messy, vulnerable, complicated you." "Good. Because you're stuck with her now." Evan pulled her close, kissing her in the boardroom where she'd fought so many battles, won so many wars. "I love being stuck with you." 6 months passed like a dream. The scandal died down, replaced by new corporate dramas and other people's mistakes. Silas quietly resigned from the company, taking a position at a competitor where he could finally have control, even if it wasn't the empire he'd wanted. Claire continued to cry at family dinners, but now she cried about how beautiful Mara and Evan were together. Lily thrived, growing confident and bright, splitting her love equally between her father and the woman she now called Mara Mom, a title Mara had earned through countless tucked-in nights and butterfly lessons and patient explanations of multiplication tables. The contract, when they finally got around to destroying it, burned beautifully in the fireplace of the penthouse. They held each other and watched it turn to ash, letting go of the transaction that had brought them together in favor of the love that would keep them there. 2 years after their fake wedding came their real one, small and intimate, just family and close friends, on the rooftop garden where butterflies danced among the flowers. Lily was the flower girl again, but this time she walked down the aisle with absolute confidence, knowing her family was solid and true. The vows they spoke this time were their own, no performance, no pretense, just two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, promising to keep choosing each other every day. "I promise to keep reorganizing the kitchen just to watch you panic," Evan said, and the gathering laughed. "I promise to keep teaching Lily about business and butterflies," Mara replied, "even when it means admitting I don't have all the answers. I promise to love you when you're strong and when you're vulnerable, when you're a CEO and when you're just the woman who steals the covers at night. I promise to let you see all of me, the armor and the softness underneath, the power and the fear, the woman I am and the woman I'm becoming." When they kissed, Lily whooped loudly, and the sound of joy echoed across the rooftop and out into the city that had witnessed their transformation. 5 years after that unlikely contract signing, they sat on the same couch where Mara had once explained the rules of their arrangement, watching their children play. Lily was 13 now, brilliant and kind, already talking about business school. Their son James, named after the driver who'd first brought them to the penthouse, was 3, a whirlwind of energy and laughter who'd inherited his mother's determination and his father's gentle heart. "Do you ever think about how this started?" Evan asked, his arm around Mara's shoulders. "Every day," she admitted. "How desperate we both were, how transactional it was supposed to be. And I'm grateful for the desperation that brought us together, for the contract that gave us an excuse to know each other, for every awkward moment and terrified conversation and reluctant feeling." She leaned into him. "I'm grateful for all of it because it led to this." "To what?" "To a family, to love, to butterfly rooms and stolen kisses, and children who'll never know what it means to have parents who don't love each other." Evan kissed the top of her head. "Best business decision you ever made." "Not a business decision anymore." "No," he agreed, watching their children play in the last light of evening. "Not anymore. Just love." That evening, after the children were asleep and the city lights spread below like scattered stars, Mara and Evan returned to their balcony, the place where so many conversations had shifted their trajectory, where so many walls had fallen. "Tell me something," Mara said softly. "If you could go back to that moment in the coffee shop, knowing everything that would happen, all the fear and risk and uncertainty, would you still sign?" Evan didn't hesitate, in a heartbeat, "because that signature bought me a year with you, and that year turned into forever." "Forever is a long time. Not long enough." She smiled, that genuine smile that had taken months to coax out and now came readily, freely. "I love you, Evan Cole." "I love you, Mara Cole." She'd taken his name in their second wedding, a choice that had surprised everyone, including herself. A symbol, she'd said, of shedding the armor she'd worn for so long. "No more Ms. Vance?" "In the boardroom, always. But here, with you, I'm just Mara, your wife, the woman who got lucky enough to be desperate at the same time you were." They stood together as the city hummed below, as their children dreamed inside, as the life they'd built surrounded them with its comfortable weight. Two people who'd started as a transaction, become a strategy, transformed into love. Sometimes the best things in life begin with the wrong reasons. Sometimes you have to sign a contract with a stranger to find your soulmate. Sometimes desperation is just destiny wearing a disguise. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to let the walls fall and the heart speak, a year becomes forever. In the master bedroom, on Mara's nightstand, sat a small butterfly made of glass. A gift from Lily on Mother's Day, because even though she had another mother somewhere, Mara was the one who showed up, who stayed, who loved her without condition. Next to it was a photo from their first wedding, the fake one, where if you looked closely, you could see the tension in their shoulders, the uncertainty in their eyes, the way they stood just slightly apart even as they held hands. And beside that, a photo from their second wedding, where everything had changed, where they leaned into each other like the world made sense only when they were touching, where their smiles were real and their love was visible and their future was written in the way they looked at each other. From contract to commitment, from strangers to soulmates, From drowning to dancing, that was their story. And it was just beginning.